Hi there and welcome to Douglas Laing's Remarkable Regional Malt Whisky Tasting. My name's Chris Leggat.
And I am Cara Laing.
We're going to take you on a journey through 5 of Scotland's whisky regions.
So before we kick things off, there's some simple housekeeping. There are a few things you might want to have in front of you. There are some things you definitely will need to have in front of you. One would be a tasting notepad to scribble down some of your thoughts on the whiskies you're about to try. The other might be a water jug. These are high strength or high alcohol strength whiskies, so you might want to add some droplets of water. Something you will definitely need is a glass, preferably something like this, which is a whisky nosing glass, but any glass will do, even a wine glass so you can swirl the whisky would help.
If you understand the regions, you'll know that there's 5. There's lowlands, there's highlands, we've got Speyside here, we've got islands, and we've got Islay here. These are our 5 regions of Scotland. There's also, it should be, remember the number 5, there's also 5 types of Scotch whisky. We have single malt, we have single grain, we have blended grain, we have blended Scotch, and we have these blends of single malts. For us, these are the most fun, probably the most complex to make, and probably the most interesting for us as a business. Our business covers all regions of Scotland and all styles and types of whisky, but this is our core range. If I'm being commercial, this is where we spend the majority of our time and our focus.
Now it is time to open the pack that you've received from us. We are kicking things off with our Epicurean Lowland malt. It is a marriage of single cask, single malts only from the Lowland region. The Lowlands are famed for being elegant, light, grassy styles of whiskies. Some names you might know would be Auchentoshan and Glenkinchie. They're 2 of the more renowned Lowland distilleries. We'd now encourage you to nose the whisky. The nice thing about this is everyone will get something slightly different, but for me there's a warm, sweet, nutty style, a bit of coconut and freshly cut grass in there as well. Worthwhile swirling the whisky in your glass to really open it up, then have a taste. This is the fun part. So again, you will probably get something different from me. Generally, you find you get a different taste depending on what you've been eating, whether you're inside, outside. For me, there's a vanilla custard creaminess. Again, some of that sweet, nutty character coming through. A bit of fruity, citrus apple style. We then talk about the finish, which is where you continue to taste the whisky thereafter. So that should be something that's quite different from what you get on the palate. So for me, there's a bit of a banana style coming through. There's still a bit of caramel lingering with some fudge and toffee and a creamy barley sweetness. Don't know if you're getting anything different?
Yeah, there's very much that sweet barley that, as you just mentioned, the sort of herbal, slight green fruits. There's like green apples, there's some lime in there as well. This is, with all the range, they're all natural colour, they're all non-chill filtered, and this one's bottled at 46.2. We've got water earlier, so drink it neat, drink it with a dash of water or a drop of water, whatever you want. I mean, the best thing about adding water to whisky is if you add too much, you can always add a little bit more whisky in. But if you're finding that there's a bit of burn there because it's at that higher strength than maybe you're normally used to, just add a little drop. And there's no right or wrong. It's all about personal reference. But I think with adding water, start small and carry on. And what that does is, if you can imagine a spring flower, it's add water, the flower is beginning to open up, and it's exactly what's happening with the whisky there. That water it's actually amplifying everything a little bit more. There's slightly more herbal notes. There's definitely more of that grassy green. It's a little bit more But take your time with these whiskies. You know, you don't want to just get it down in one. Take your time, enjoy it. Actually, this video that we're doing for you is going to be quicker than, of course, we recommend. So again, you know, press the pause button. But I'm going to try this now that I've added water and see what the difference is.
As Chris was saying, the Epicurean can be enjoyed neat, like you're trying it just now, with a drop of water, like Chris is. Some people enjoy it over ice. We have no issue with that. And actually with Epicurean, it's probably what we would regard as our most versatile malt. Versatile in the regard, it's the one we most regularly have it with apple juice. A good quality cloudy apple juice with Epicurean is phenomenal, particularly as we're approaching summertime. It's equally good with soda water or with a tonic. It's a really, for me, this is an archetypal, exactly what you would expect, lowland style of whiskey, and that's what helps make it so versatile, because it is very vibrant, very fresh. Think citrus fruits, apples, custard cream. It works incredibly well straight up, but also as a long drink.
We heard yesterday that someone loves it with a lemon drizzle cake, so the perfect whiskey for some home baking. But I think Epicurean, the nature of it, it's very light, it's very fresh, it's very easy. As we go on the journey through Scotland, we do not expect you to score them all 10 out of 10. Because what Cara might like fresh, I might not like, I might prefer something smoky, peaty or sherried or more bourbon in style. And that's exactly what we're doing. These are the ultimate distillation of the regions. So for us, to sort of summarise what Cara said about Epicurean, is this is the ultimate distillation of the lowlands. So, you know, there's lots of choice in the lowlands, but this is your sort of stereotypical lowland malt in a bottle.
And a perfect whiskey to kick things off, because it is the lightest, the most elegant. Quite often Chris and I regard this as our breakfast whiskey. It's a good one to start the day with, especially on a clean, fresh palate. You should really be getting all that vibrant, zesty character coming through.
There'll be a little bit of tongue-in-cheek throughout this this video. Great, well that sort of wraps up the lowlands. I think you know, if you want to press pause and clean your glass or you know, reflect in the notes that you've maybe taken in your book, now is the time to do it. Otherwise, we're going to crack on with the next whiskey. So the next whiskey on our journey, we've gone from the lowlands, very simple, the line between Glasgow and Edinburgh, the lowlands, and then above that is the Highlands. We're going to enjoy now our Timorous Beastie. This is bottled at 46.8%. Same as Epicurean and the others, natural colour, non-chill filtered. And this one is very different from the start. I'll just pour myself one, you do that as well. So, firstly, cheers.
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 Nosing this whiskey, you get a real, some people say American cream soda, I can't get that out of my head, but there's again more vanilla. There's a lot of sort of glazed creme brulee, slightly burnt creme brulee. There's sweet Highland barley in there. And it's really important to emphasise that if you're a bourbon drinker, this is really important, because this is predominantly first fill American bourbon cask matured spirit. So what we're doing is buying spirit from the Highlands distilleries, a selection of them. We are maturing in predominantly first fill bourbon casks, and we're waiting. The whiskey goes into our wood and it waits in our warehouse until we think it's ready. And then we create the recipe. It's the family secret recipe. Marry the casks together, and ultimately this is it. That's the quick version. But what you have here is something that's very atypical of the Highland region, I think. It's got a slightly more, you can even tell on the nose it's going to be slightly more oily. I've not tried it yet, so please. what we were talking about earlier with the Epicurean, it's just amplified a little bit more. It's a little bit more rounder. There's a little bit more sort of that toasted and burnt barley flavour coming through, but you really notice the influence of the cask here. You really notice the influence of those bourbon casks, and you really notice the influence of the Highland spirit here. So the spirit's a little bit more oily, a little bit more robust. That married with those great casks is wonderful. So for us, this is the ultimate distillation of the Highlands. Highlands in geography is the biggest region, distilling region of Scotland. It goes just from the lowland line just above Glasgow and Edinburgh right the way north up to the islands at the north of the country. So in landmass it's the biggest. But this is our Timorous Beastie. It's been around since, when's it been around since, Cam?
Since 2014 this one came into the Douglas Laing portfolio, and it's another one that's great on its own like this, and it's a much rounder, fuller style of whisky from what we started with the Epicurean. It also, ironically, given the mouse on the label, pairs incredibly well with a cheese, preferably a hard, slightly salted cheese. That salty style of cheese goes incredibly well with the honey sweetness that comes through in Timorous Beastie.
But the Timorous Beastie that's in your glass and in your hands just now, maybe it's gone, is certainly our second in the lineup. So we start in the lowlands, Lyme Fresh as Cara said, breakfast. Well, maybe this is now lunchtime, and we're getting a little bit more bang for our buck at this point.
So to date, the whiskies you've had have been predominantly matured in ex-American oak, hence that slightly vanilla sweetness that's been continually coming through. Now we move on to something really quite different. We move on to Speyside with Scallywag. Get you to open that for me, please.
Surely.
Speyside has the largest number of distilleries within that region, and it generally is known for sherried style of whiskies. By that we mean most of the single malt that is distilled in Speyside spends its life maturing in ex-sherry butts from Spain. As Chris said earlier, all our whiskies are natural colour. We don't add anything, we don't take anything away. So everything you see here is completely natural. Some of the bigger companies add caramel colouring to their whiskies because they are looking for consistency.
Or smaller companies, or other companies.
Yeah, other companies. We prefer a natural approach, so all that lovely deep amber colour you see in the Scallywag bottle is because the spirit has been spent years extracting all the colour and all the goodness and all the character and complexity from the sherry casks or sherry butts that it's been maturing in. So this one is Scallywag at 46% strength. You will see on our packaging terms like no colouring, which I've just explained, and also no chill filtration. By that, again, I just mean we leave in all the goodness. Some companies choose to chill filter their whisky. We believe that by not chill filtering, we leave in all the good, chunky, wonderful character that the cask imparts. So Scallywag, again, I'd encourage you to nose it. It's really quite different from what you've been trying. For me, there's a bit of treacle toffee in there. There are red fruits, maybe some raspberries, some plums coming through, and a bit of spice there as well in the nose. Now to try it, cheers. And immediately I get a cocoa mocha style, a bit of fruitcake in there, more red forest fruits, a bit of cinnamon, a bit of nutmeg. It's really warming. This is a whisky we actually, Chris and I regularly drink it with ginger ale and a squeeze of lime in a long drink, and it's great that way. I have to say it's also pretty phenomenal on a cold November, December night. This is very much my winter dram of choice. It's got that incredibly warming, spicy kick to it. The finish as well, it goes on, bringing back more of that allspice character, a bit of dark chocolate in there. Really, for me, this is a cracker. Helped, of course, by the very cute dog on the front, which was in fact our family dog. It is a wire-haired fox terrier, and for anyone that knows terriers, knows and loves terriers, they'll understand that they're feisty characters, full of life, full of energy, and that was very much what inspired the style of the Scallywag whisky and indeed its name.
Scallywag's been around since 2013. So, you know, we've had it for 7 years, but in that 7 years, he has managed to get around about 65 countries globally. So, again, when we're talking to people, first of all, they like whiskey, you know, rum drinkers are really drawn to Scallywag. Likewise, Speyside drinkers, you know, so if you know someone that likes a Speyside malt, Scallywag being the epitome and the ultimate distillation of Scallywag, is a great alternative to potentially their usual dram. We've had numerous limited editions with Scallywag. Scallywag really sort of captures the imagination, and similarly with all these whiskies, you know, we've got serious liquid, as Cara's mentioned, about non-colouring, non-chill filtered, all the good stuff that you want nowadays. You know, whiskey's not your quote dad's drink anymore. It can be fun, it can be interesting. These labels are, you know, there's no tartan, there's no bagpipes, there's no haggis, there's no rivers. You know, it's very traditional and there's a real place for that. But you know, this is approachable, it's fun, it's light-hearted, but it's really serious liquid, and that's important. But we're starting to see a lot of limited editions come out with Scallywag, age statements. We've had a phenomenal 13-year-old that was 100% matured in first fill Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks, PX sherry casks, and that was just, you know, you kind of mentioned treacle earlier. It was dark fruit, it was rich, it was intense, and it was incredible. We've also got a 10-year-old that sits alongside this core range, and we've had some limited editions that have gone into Europe and the Far East. So Scallywag is great fun. It was your old dog, so I mean, it was
close to my heart. And actually, we should say in terms of limited editions, we're shortly launching a Scallywag chocolate edition for World Chocolate Day in July. And that's primarily because this is very much one worth trying at home, particularly if you've got any leftover Easter eggs still kicking about. Scallywag pairs incredibly well with chocolate. Again, in the interests of bringing new consumers into the whiskey category, we don't believe in taking ourselves too seriously. We think people should experiment with whiskey, whether they choose to drink it straight up, but perhaps try it in a long serve like with ginger ale. But equally, food pairings work incredibly well, and Scallywag with a bit of dark chocolate or milk chocolate, it's amazing how it just releases and intensifies that already apparent cocoa mocha character that comes through in the Scallywag whisky, and that's primarily as a result of years spent maturing in ex-sherry butts.
Whiskey number 3. I hope you enjoyed it. We started at the lowlands with Epicurean, we went up to the highlands with Timorous Beastie, and then we went to the northeast with into Speyside with Scallywag. So that's our first 3. I hope your notepad's full and you've got a fresh glass for this next whiskey. Can I have a Rock Island, please? Thanking you. You want to pour yourself one, or I'll pour you one?
Thank you.
So we're opening the miniature pack this evening. That's in front of you. So let's move over another region and over to the islands of Scotland. Now, cheers. The islands of Scotland. So you can start to think of Skye, you can start to think of Orkney, and of course you can think of places like Arran and the very famous whisky distilling region of Islay, which is of course an island. Rock Island for us is really interesting, and as I'll tell you a quick story as we're nosing and drinking it. But nosing, I mean, this is as a young boy going to Islay on the ferry, or going to even more recently Arran. If you're up on the top deck of a Calmac ferry on a slightly windy day, and you take a deep breath, that's what Rock Island is.
Very salty.
Salty, it's oceanic, it's maritime, there's a lot going on there. There's, that's like a walk in the beach in a glass. That's very Moorish, and I keep stalling to drink it. I want to just keep nosing it, but cheers again.
Cheers.
Expect in the palate more of that oceanic quality. There's light little puffs of peat that come through. There's some lemon zest. There's some salted caramel. There's, back to that sort of sea air and freshness. That's wonderful. And for me, this is a real. It's very mature as a whiskey. Because of the influence of peat, which we've now brought in here. None of these are peated. This is lightly peated, and peat bringing the character of smoke and ash and fire to your whiskey. This is very gently bringing that in, married with some sweetness. It's very complex. Rock Island is bottled at 46.8%. The same as the others, natural colour, non-chill filtered, but it's a marriage of single malts purely from Arran, from the islands of Jura, from the island of Orkney, and from the island of Islay. So when you've got that whiskey in your glass, you can start to pick up some of those single malts. You can pick up on Orkney, you can pick up some of that salty maritime that I spoke about earlier. On Arran, you can pick up some of that slightly sweet, orangey, lemon zesty. Jura, you always get the earthiness from Jura. And of course, that peat will come from Islay. So if you can imagine marrying those single malts from those regions, very complex. That's Rock Island. So for us, the ultimate distillation of the islands, the taste of the island, salty, maritime, slightly peated, and it's got loads of character. We know what also works well in longer drinks. So if you like a Bloody Mary, try a Bloody Joseph, which is replacing vodka for Rock Island. So you can imagine all that flavour in a long serve of a Bloody Joseph. I know it goes really well in America, or imported there, and they do a lot with that. But I should say at this point that Rock Island is so complex, it's so hard to make. We've both worked in the single malt industry as well. These are blended malts, and Rock Island is by far one of the hardest, if not the hardest, of the regional malts to make. As I say, if you're talking about bringing those four regions together, and they all bring something extra sweet, earthy, salty, smoky, it's difficult to always get it perfect, and it's a real challenge to produce. So if we were just working with the single malts, we could work to a recipe and go. These are small batch production, so we're genuinely hands-on, and quite often Rock Island is a tricky one just to perfect. We sometimes have to add a little bit more from Orkney to get maritime, or sometimes we're missing the sweet peat, so we have to dial up the Islay influence. So it's complex, but very rewarding, and that aftertaste just is going on and on and on.
It is. It's the balance for me with Rock Island requires a lot of time and skill from our side. So as Chris was saying, we essentially bring together a number of single casks, single malts, in the case of Rock Island only from the islands, and thereafter it's for our master blender to ensure that each and every batch has that perfect balance, that there's salt but it's not overwhelmed by salt. There's a bit of sweetness, but it's not too sweet. There's a bit of the smoke, a bit of the earthiness, and it's a difficult one to juggle and get correct, but the end result for me is phenomenal, and it's a wonderful next step into the peat territory. Some people are terrified the minute you say the word smoke or peat with whiskey. These three have no peaty, smoky style to them. This is us dipping our toe in the water with a bit of smoke in there, but done in a very gentle style. For me, there's a lot of seaweed in there, as well as the maritime saltiness, but there's also a wonderful underlying sweetness there as well. And as you say, it's like a walk on Troon Beach.
The really interesting thing for me with Rock Island, and I suppose it sums it up, Douglas Laing is a business. Our business has been going since 1948. Cara's grandfather set it up, and her father works there just now, chairman, and generation 3 just now. And what's fascinating, and I suppose Rock Island is a great example of this, is one of the unique things that we do. I mean, we're distillers, we're blenders, we're bottlers. Distilling is simple. We have a distillery in the Highlands with Strathern. This is the blending, the blender's skill here, and bottling is obviously putting it all together and getting it out the door. But I think for Rock Island is a great example of what Douglas Laing as a company do. And one of the key things that I'm involved in and the business is involved in is the spirit sourcing. And to be able to work with single malts from the regions that we've mentioned, never mind the distilleries that we're talking about with Rock Island, is really exciting. And we're very lucky to do it. It was the foresight of the founder, your grandfather, who through the late 40s, 50s and 60s set up these great filling contracts that some are still working today. And essentially what that means is we go to these distilleries, we buy an amount of spirit, and the second fun thing is we get to put it into our wood. Again, a fun bit that I like to get involved in is the selection of whether it be ex-bourbon casks, or also sherry casks, Pedro Jimenez casks, whatever it may be, American oak casks. It's exciting. So Douglas Laing, it gives us the credibility, and it gives us the understanding of all the regions, because we're sourcing not just from one distillery but across Scotland. And I think Rock Island, I mean, that's joyful. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well. I hope your notepads are full. I hope you've got lots of questions that you can come and chat to us about later on our social media channels or via info@douglaslaing.com. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to charge our glasses now and move on to Big Pete.
This is our final whisky, and we have saved the most powerful one for last. Big Pete, unsurprisingly, takes us over to Islay. So Big Pete is a marriage of single cask, single malts, only from the island of Islay, which is very much famed for its big, smoky, peaty style of whiskies. There are a number of distilleries on Islay, and as Chris has touched on, we are fortunate that we have these filling programs whereby essentially we fill our whiskies at 0 hours of age, straight off the whisky still, put them into our own casks or barrels and mature them our way, and decide ultimately when we believe they're perfect and ready to be bottled. So Big Pete is a marriage of a number of different Islay whiskies. There are some names in there you would recognise for sure. Big Pete's bottled at 46% strength. As you can see, no colouring. It essentially looks like a white wine in there, and that's because there's really no sherry influence. This has only been matured in ex-American barrels. So, on the nose, and it's very different from where we've been so far. For me though, this is phenomenal. There's a real iodine, TCP, medicinal style there. A bit of streaky bacon too. And an earthy, smoky style coming through.
As soon as Cara said streaky bacon, it was like, of course, yeah.
The palate brings more of that streaky bacon with a touch of burnt toast in there as well. There's a buttery oiliness. Again, that will be because we don't chill filter this whisky. We leave in all the natural character that comes from the cask. There's a cured meat, bonfire, barbecue style. For me, this is phenomenal. For people who like Islay whiskies, which I very much do, this is the best of them. Essentially, it's Islay in a bottle, where we've taken a number of Islay distilleries whiskies, put them together, got again that perfect balance. So whilst it is, as the name suggests, big and peaty and phenolic with lots of barbecue and bonfire ash and chimney soot, there's also for me a wonderful sweet character there. There's a bit of burnt brown sugar and toasted barley in style. It's, for me, this is wonderful.
Strangely, I get a dark fruit that just comes through, and it's like a blueberry, and obviously there's no sherry casks in there, but it's like that, you know, it's streaky bacon, there's something going, but there's a lot going on. And I think it's important, again, this is a great example of when you talk about colour, you know, not only is this predominantly 100% matures in American oak, but we're not always using first fills. Sometimes we use first and second fills, and that's because we don't want the cask to overpower the Islay and the smoke and the fire. So actually, when we get this on the nose, and it's got all those flavours you talk about, then when you get it on the palate, yes, it's lots of peat and it's smoky, but it's quite moorish. You know, you want to go back to it. You want to enjoy this. I mean, Islay as a region, as an island, you know, you've got single malts there that are completely unpeated, and you've got single malts there that are the peatiest that there is in Scotland. So what we've tried to do, again, likewise with all of these regional malts and with Big Peat, is give you a bit of balance, give you a bit of a style and a flavour of Islay, give you Islay in a bottle, essentially. And I think, you know, that's the challenge as a blender, and that's almost the exciting bit as being the blender. You know, we're trying to marry up what does Islay as a region and as an island look like in a bottle, and I think that's what we've done quite well there.
There's a great balance to this whisky, for me anyway. It's one where, particularly during these challenging times where we're all in our homes and in our gardens, we would really encourage you to try this whisky with any spring, summer barbecues you might have coming up. Again, there's that cured meat barbecue style, it just amplifies a barbecue very well. It's also excellent if you're feeling a bit more experimental in a classic whisky sour. We call it the smoky sour, and Big Peat in a whisky sour really is a great combination.
I've just added a little bit of water there just to see what happens, and it certainly calms the flames, calms the burn of Islay, but actually on the palate and the mouthfeel, it just amplifies it a little bit. So again, if you're experimenting with water and you're a little bit unsure, and maybe it's just a bit too much for you, add a little bit of water and see if some of those flavours open up, but at the same time soften. But we've had 5 whiskies, we've had 5 regions of Scotland. We've got the Epicurean from Lowlands, we've got Timorous Beastie from the Highlands, we've got Scallywag from Speyside, Rock Island from the Islands, and Big Peat from Islay. As I like to say, breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, bedtime, but in very simple terms. And jokes aside, you know, you're going from light and fresh, you're going from honey sweet because of that bourbon, you're going to sweet and fruity because of the involvement of sherry cask, you're going to salty maritime because of the quality of the single malts that we've pulled together, and you've got earth and fire and ash and bonfire with Big Peat. So you're really going through the flavour profile. So 5 regions, 5 very distinctly different Scotch whiskies, and the ultimate distillation of Scotland's whisky regions right here. This is our view that these are all blended malts, and sometimes blended malts gets a hard time. These are not blended Scotch, that's a category. These are blended malts. So ultimately, these are single cask, single malts married together.
We really hope you've enjoyed these whiskies. As Chris said at the start, you won't give 10 out of 10 for each and every one, but we really hope there's been at least 1 or 2.
9.5 maybe.
Yeah, probably. We hope there's at least been 1 or 2 you've really enjoyed and might become a new firm favourite for you. We hope you will get to know these whiskies better and follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Remarkable Malts and on Facebook also.
Itison 20 will get you 20% off douglaslaying.com on our website. I hope you've enjoyed your tour around Scotland. I hope you've enjoyed the whiskies. You're not going to love them all, but we hope you have loved them all. That's the fun of Scotch whisky. Challenging times, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Enjoy your malts, have fun, and we'll thanks for tuning in.
Yep, absolutely. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.